So I see, let me just have a look at it. So we got some participants. I'll just put it over here. Are all of you able to see the chat window? So I'm just putting it over here. Hello, good morning. Nice Saturday morning. It's election time in Karnataka. So how many of you from Karnataka? How many of you from Bangalore? All right. Excuse me. So all of you voting? And what about the others? Where are you from? So by the way, I think there is a particular way by which you raise your hand in the webinar. So just wanted to tell you that, just go ahead and post it in the chat window over here. So all of you able to see the chat window. I'm just wanting to make sure that, okay, so Gurgaon, Jaipur, Chennai, Nagpur, Pune, Mumbai, Pune. Sayan, the Ranchi, Noida, Dharwad, Kolkata, Bangalore, Delhi, Pune. So very, very mixed audience, I think, from all over the place. Pune, but working in Bangalore, okay. Chennai, good, good, good. So let me kind of get started. So as you see, the topic is how to shortlist the B school that is right for you. Now, if you see, I'm not saying how to shortlist a B school, right? There is also another part to it, which is a B school that is right for you, correct? So I think that's one of the things that most people, most students that I talk to, right? That's what they have to tell me. They say, Arun, when I go to all these websites, when I look at all these fancy brochures and I look at the nice websites, I look at what the alums are saying, correct? Almost every school, just looks the same, right? It just looks so much appealing. It looks, so much more, it just looks enticing. But how do I sit in India, correct? Assuming that most of you are from India. How do I sit in India and, think of any college, forget college in India itself, but even colleges outside of India, right? If I were to go to Europe or if I were to go to the US, then how do I really know about it, right? Because Indian colleges, I can still go and visit them, right? How do I go and figure out about these schools? Should I even be doing an MBA, correct? So we will be answering all those questions. By the way, I meant, should we be doing an MBA outside of India, okay? Or should we be doing an MBA inside of India? Would you be doing a one-year program? Should you look at a two-year program, right? So a lot of questions we'll be looking at it. A couple of ground rules before we get started. So we will try to make it as organized as possible. We have another 90 minutes. Make sure that in these 90 minutes, keep your focus on the webinar. One thing that I've noticed is if you have a lot of tabs open and your mind is constantly wavering, you will not get the kind of the output from this webinar, right? Like what you hope to achieve. That you can get only by focusing on what we are discussing today. And I've already shown you the chat window, correct? There is another one which is a poll window. So here is a poll. So I just gave you a poll. So why don't you just go ahead and select your responses so that we know. Right? Some of you still left. Go ahead, whatever you think is appropriate response. It's an easy question, right? It's very hard. It's not a tough question. It's not something you need to think too much, right? So cool. So we got 18 of our online students. We got 19 of our classroom students. 19 people are interested, and another 20 odd people who are just curious about the topic. So excellent. So let's kind of get started, and let's see. One point I wanted to just mention over here is that there are two windows over here. One is the Q&A window, correct? In the Q&A window, please ask questions. that are specific to B school selection. All right. So Harsh, you have asked a question. Fair enough, but you can use the chat window to discuss. Okay, so you can use the chat window to discuss things which are like general. Like for example, Yokesh said that I visited Chennai, but I've been told that the center is closed. Yeah, we closed our center in Chennai. It's now currently only in Bangalore with plans of Mumbai and Delhi, but that's still in the future. So anything that is an observation, anything that you want to do, use the chat window. Use the Q&A window only to have your questions. And just a request over here, in order to make this session really useful, I would require questions based on B school selection only. Okay. And second thing that I request from you is when you post a question, please wait. I will eventually get to answering your questions. Sometimes I've seen people just copy paste. Hey, you did not answer my question. I'm going to copy paste it 2-3 more times. It just fills up the whole thing. It just makes it just hard. And as I said, I'm not going to be talking about profile. I'm not going to talk about specific things about GMAT, right? I'm going to talk about B school selection, right? Let's keep it laser sharp. Let's keep it very focused on B school selection. All right. One last point before we get started. If you feel you're not able to hear my voice, if there is a lag, please wait. Please wait for a few other people to complain, right? Wait for at least 20 seconds. Just put it on the chat window, right? And I need one person to help me over here, at least one person, but if all of you are able to help me, it'll be great. If someone asks a question in the chat window that you can answer. So anybody who has attended the previous webinar, correct, is this session recorded, correct? Yes, this session is recorded and it will be shared to you. Right? We'll be putting it up on YouTube also. But what I will not be doing is answering questions like, is profile building important to get admission? So I won't be answering that in the chat window. I'll be looking at it in the Q&A. Okay. So in case you see a lag, just wait. I'm still in India, so the current could go off, the internet could go off, but in the unlikely scenario that it does happen, all right, I'll come back, I'll get back. I have multiple ways to connect to the internet. I'll use my backup connection. I'll get online in under a minute. Okay, so just in case you feel a lag, hold on. Otherwise, if one person is able to hear me clearly, that means everyone else should be able to hear me. All right. Cool. What is the agenda? As I told you, in the next 90 minutes or so, I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know. So after this session at 12 noon today, you should walk out. You should walk out like an expert on B school selection, right? Let me, kind of be very honest with you on this. See, B school selection is not that hard. Okay, it's not that hard. People tend to make it hard. Okay. They tend to make it sound like it's a cryptic algorithm. It is not a cryptic algorithm. In fact, if you were to ask me, doing an MBA is like getting married, right? Now, in terms of your investment, both financial investment, emotional investment, in terms of the time required, correct, to this whole thing, the opportunity cost, right? In multiple factors, if you look at it, doing an MBA is pretty much like getting married, right? And that is where I think, the analogy also kind of, makes sense, because when you get married, right, if anybody of you, have gone through that process, or you can, you have very, vicariously lived that process through a friend who got married, or maybe you're seeing a guy or a girl and you're thinking about getting married. So you will realize a couple of parallels, right? First is, you would agree that there is no set formula, correct? There is really no set formula, but usually there are certain things that we have in our mind, right? Like, for example, physical attribute could be something that you have in mind. For example, you could say that I want a girl who's taller than me, correct? Or I want, a guy who's taller than me, or a girl who's shorter than me, correct? Now, this is a requirement that you have. Okay. And then you could say, well, I also want someone who's working, so that they understand what it takes to, work and go and, function on a corporate setup. So what we'll be doing today is I'll be giving you a framework. See, I cannot possibly tell you exactly which school to apply to. Similarly, I cannot tell you which girl to get married to or which guy to get married to. What we will do is we will look at some attributes. We'll say, okay, physical characteristic. Okay, now this is one attribute. What do people typically do when they look at physical attribute? They look at height, they look at this, they look at that. Similarly, we look at, okay, professional experience. We look at family background. Similarly, I'm going to give you 3 or 4 things. In fact, there are 4 things that I'll be discussing today. Okay, and trust me, my experience, and I'm going to talk about that very shortly. I'm the founder and CEO of Crackverbal, and over the last 12 years, I've trained over 6,000 students on the GMAT and also for the whole MBA application process, right? And if you were to ask me in these last 12 years, if there is something that I've learned about B school selection, it is pretty much that these are the only 4 parameters, right? What are these 4 parameters? I'll be discussing that in our session today, right? But really, just as long as you know what these 4 parameters are, you don't need to worry. Any school, you can run it through those 4 parameters and check whether it's a good school for you or not. All right. So yeah, so that's pretty much about me. I have been doing this full time since 2011. Before that, I was in IT. And many students who have attended my classroom sessions probably know that I crack a lot of IT jokes, right? So I was in technology for 10 years and then I, plunged into teaching full time. But I was teaching part-time along with my full-time job since 2001, right? So that's like 17 years. Sounds crazy, right? Makes me feel old, but really 17 years I've been teaching. And the first 5 years I was teaching CAT, and then the last 12 years I've been teaching GMAT. And just a fun fact about me, apart from starting Crackverbal, I have had a lot of students come and tell me that, Arun, we would like to improve our communication skills, but our companies are not helping us do that. So I started another company called English for India, where we actually help corporates train their employees in speaking better English. And when I say better English, it's overall communication, English being a very important facet of that. So in case your company requires any kind of English training, that is not the objective of the webinar, but in case your company requires any kind of training, please let me know. We'll be glad to get in touch with you. Cool. So let's now look at, so this is a little bit about Crackverbal, right? Just wanted to introduce, we have admission services division that is different from the Crackverbal, training part. So we have online and we have classroom, but apart from training, apart from doing private tutoring and all that, we also have admission services where we work one-on-one with clients, with candidates. And the way our model works is you get assigned to a mentor, and the mentor then takes care of your entire process. So right from brainstorming, looking at your profile, telling you what you can improve in your profile, to looking at the kind of schools that you're selecting, making sure that these are the right kind of schools, whether you should add some school, remove some school, looking at your post-MBA career path, most importantly, whether you're headed in the right direction, whether you're able to convey the story correctly. So we'll be doing all of that as part of our admission services. In case you are in touch with someone at Crackverbal, you can always reach out to them to learn a little bit more. I'm just giving a snapshot of some of our mentors. As you see, they are from the top schools, around the globe. And then you also have me, right? So I'm the MBA coach. I kind of head the admission services thing. So I make sure that, everyone is delivering the kind of same quality. So I am also personally invested in all our candidates. A free resources to get you started. So in case you have not already done so, our YouTube channel has a lot of great videos for applications, right? So make sure that you have a look at it. Also, we have a bunch of ebooks on various topics: how to finance your MBA, how to select the right school, how to stand out, how to get into your dream school. So we got a bunch of ebooks over there that could be interesting to you. We also have a way by which you can get your profile evaluated. So you get a custom PDF sent to you over email. Once you review that PDF, then you get onto a call with someone from our team who will walk you through, answer all your main queries. So any questions you have, I want all of you to, anything specific that you have, please make sure that you utilize this, because in a webinar, there is only so much I can do, right? So I'm going to answer questions that are slightly more generic, okay? To the whole thing, right? Which will not be very specific to you. So in case you want something specific, right? Please make sure that you take this. I got a couple of questions on the chat window. Let me just, so Aditya said, why did you switch from CAT to GMAT? So Aditya, I'll tell you, this is 2005, okay? I was working full time, and I was teaching CAT, and I also got this opportunity to teach GMAT. I'll be very honest, I did that because GMAT coaching paid more money, right? I was getting, I don't know, man, couple of $100 for CAT, and GMAT paid me, I think at that time, like $500 or something. And that looked very lucrative. So that is really the reason I moved on to the dark side, right? And thanks a lot, Ashish Srivastav. Rajat asked a question and you answered it for me. So thanks for that. And all of these links, it's available in the recording, but more importantly, you can just Google for it, free profile evaluation, crack verbal, correct? Or if you look at it, crack verbal application ebooks, right? So all of these, if you can just Google for it, you should be able to get that, all right? Cool. So now let's get started with the most, important thing, correct? Which is, how do I shortlist B schools? We see a lot of rankings and we see a lot of data, but how do we go about doing it? So what I will do is I will probably just pick, as I said, the top 4 reasons for you to, or what are the 4 things that you should be looking at if you're looking at doing an MBA, correct? So I'll just go through it. I'll be going through it in detail, but I just wanted to give you like a background of what these 4 things are. So we'll be starting with the first thing, which is we'll be looking at what is called as profile fitment, correct? Is your profile, your background, is it in sync with what the college expects? See, a lot of times when students apply to a particular school and they get rejected, remember the rejection is not because you are underqualified. Sometimes people could reject you because you are overqualified, right? Sometimes people could reject because you are not the kind of profile that they are really looking at in a B school, right? So multiple reasons we look at what do you mean by profile? What do B schools look for? How do you see this fitment? Okay. Second, the reason you want to do an MBA is because you want to get a job. So the second thing that you need to look at is, will this B school give me the job that I really want? Okay, so I'll be taking you through how to research on this. I'll give you a couple of tools by which you can figure out when people graduate from schools, where do they get to, what is their background. So all of that data is available. I'll just tell you how to get there. The third thing is geography. I think this is a question that a lot of you have been asking me, that is US safe to go, right? Should I be applying to Canada? I wasn't thinking about it, but now a lot of people are telling me. Then you also have students who come with specific things like, I want to go to, let's say, INSEAD, or I want to go to London Business School, or, specific colleges that you're looking at. So we look at geography as such, right? And I'll be answering 2 of your main questions, which is, Indian versus foreign B school. I think that's something that a lot of people have. And also this 1 year versus 2 years. So here is a clue. Both of them are related. Okay. So I'll tell you how they are related, but I'll be answering both of these questions. And finally, you want to obviously apply to schools that you like, but you also want to apply to schools where you have a good chance of getting in, right? See, it's very easy to say, okay, what is the best school in the world? Harvard Business School. But, applying to Harvard Business School alone may not be a great strategy. So we will also be looking at what are the things that we can do to improve our chances of admission. All right. So looks like a fair list of things to go through. Let me start off with the first thing, which is profile fitment. Okay. Now, I want you to think of the whole B school journey not from the admission standpoint, but from the recruitment standpoint. See, what happens, people, what they don't understand and what they don't realize, and this is something that I want you to remember, is admissions, then you get people into the program. So that's your MBA. And after MBA, what do you have? You have recruitment. Now, what happens right now, you're looking at world only from this lens. You're looking at it only from an admissions lens. But the number one worry, and I'll be talking about it a little more in detail for the B school, is they are trying to see a couple of things. The first thing that they are trying to see is, will this guy make the maximum use of the resources and facilities that we have to offer at our MBA program, at our B school, right? The second thing that they are looking at is, will this guy eventually get placed? Okay. These are the two things that they are looking at, which at this point, I agree you are not thinking. But think of it from a B school perspective. So what is really happening is there is a flow happening in this way. So now the admissions team, okay, is actually getting input, not just from the actual, the professors at the B school, what they are seeing, okay, our curriculum is meant for a particular type of student. So I'll tell you, okay, now crack verbal, right? Now we typically appeal to people who are already doing well or who are good on the GMAT, right? Like we may not appeal very well to someone who's, at a very low score on the GMAT, right? So crack verbal may not appeal to someone who's, aiming for, let's say, a 500, 550 kind of score. We really don't cater to that, right? So we cater to people who are aiming for 700 plus on the GMAT. That is how our course is structured, correct? Now, why I'm saying this is because B school also, they are going to look at things like, what is your age? Now, I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Now, the average age at Harvard is about 25 years, okay? 25, 26. They are about 25 when they join, 20, 27 when they graduate, correct? And then you look at IMA, PGPX, the one-year course, right? The average age here is 31. Or you take IMD. IMD is a school in Switzerland, correct? The average age over there is also somewhere around 31, 32 years, correct? Now, what you'll realize is that you need to look at it. See, if you are, so I'm not trying to encourage everyone to be in the middle of the bell curve. So I'm not saying that everyone has to be like bang in the center. You can be a little bit, there is some amount of standard deviation that is allowed, correct? But to a large extent, you don't want to become an outlier. Tell me, in the last many years, Harvard has never admitted people, okay, with, who are more than 30. At least to my knowledge, it has never admitted people who are more than 30. Why? Because Harvard is looking for potential. Harvard is saying, you know what, I'm going to bet on this racehorse. I'm going to bet on this guy. I'm going to bet on his potential. Whereas IMA, right, I'm just giving an example, IMA or IMD, what they do is they look for, they look for people who have already shown, established themselves as leaders who have shown some amount of managerial skills. Not everyone, but that is their expectation. In fact, IMA, you cannot even apply if you are less than 27 years of age, right? There are these restrictions that you have. Now, obviously, average age and work experience go hand in hand, correct? But my suggestion is you have to consider these things when you're looking at a B school. So if you're a younger applicant, an IMA or an IMD or, some of these schools could be very tough for you to get in because typically they don't encourage people with under 2 years of experience to apply. But on the other hand, a Harvard would love to take someone with 2, 3 years experience, right? But would not take someone with, let's say, 10 years experience, correct? So it's very important that you kind of have a look at that part, right? People don't talk about it, but it's a fact. Age does play a role. There are some schools, for example, in the US, some of the schools that are considered to be older applicant friendly, right? Schools like Wharton, schools like MIT. I've had cases where my students have gone to some of these schools in their early 30s. So there are some schools that are older applicant friendly, but that is one thing that you need to take into account when you're looking at profile. Excuse me. The second thing that you need to look at is, and I'll be talking about this a little bit more when I speak about, geography. But one more thing that you need to take into account is with regards to, this whole thing about, just one second, let me just clear up a little bit of this. Okay. So one of the things that you need to also look at is, and as I said, I'll be talking about it when I talk about geography, but see, some schools are very good at attracting a particular type of students. Okay. And again, this depends on the employability factor, right? So they feel that people with a particular kind of background are better suited for our college, right? Now, this also means that they tend to, in some sense, specialize in those areas. Okay, so let me give you an example. Okay, uh, the example is, let us say in the US, people are not aware, but apart from the top 10, 15 schools, there are some other schools that, attract. For example, have you heard of the school called Foster MBA, right? Which is the University of Michigan. Sorry, University of Washington. What am I saying? Right? So Washington is up in the north, right? And guess what are the other companies that are also in that state? Well, that state has a city called Seattle. And if you've heard of Seattle, then you probably have heard of Microsoft and one more company, Amazon, right? Now, what has happened is, because Foster is in Seattle and because you have like Amazon and Microsoft, by the way, Starbucks is also headquartered out of, say, Seattle. Because you have all these IT kind of firms, what you realize is there are also a lot of peripheral companies that exist in Seattle. What I mean by peripheral is, think of it as, like companies that work with Microsoft or do business with Amazon, right? So they also have that proximity. Now, because of that, okay, Foster MBA attracts a lot of guys from Indian IT background, right? So if you have a tech background, that's a great school in terms of ROI. Okay. Now I'm just giving one example, right? So you need to look at it and say, okay, what is the kind of people applying to these schools? Are they people who look like me in some sense? Right? See, I want diversity, but at the same time, I want conformity, right? I want to make sure that, okay, this is the kind of profile that that particular school looks at. One more thing that I would like you to look at, and this is something that people tend to ignore, is the number of Asian and Indian students. Now, it kind of works both ways. So you want to make sure that you go to a school where there are enough Indians. Like when I say enough Indians, like if you go to something like, let's say, North Dakota, right? Or if you go to some, no-name college somewhere in the boondocks of, let's say, Ireland, correct? What you realize is culture can be a huge, it takes adjusting, especially if you are a vegetarian, especially if you have certain things, and trust me, the first winter is when you start really missing home, correct? Having said that, there is also another flip side to it, which is you don't want to go to a place where there are too many Indians and Asians. Okay, so I'll just give an example of one of my students who got into a B school in the US, and it was ranked 30, 35, but when he actually ended up, inquiring more about that school, what he got to know that it was a very, there is a term for it, they call it a Desi school, right? So a Desi school is a school where typically you have Indians, correct? So, or rather, the number of Indians are more, right? You want to make sure that you want to go to a place where there is some amount of Indian community. For example, if I can say, right, in the US, you are looking at West Coast, right, California. You're looking at, let's say, Texas. That's another state that people apply to. You are looking at Florida. You are looking at New Jersey, New York, that area. And you're looking at Chicago. Right now, or I would say East Coast, I would include Boston, I would include Pittsburgh, I would include New York. In case you're aware of the geography of the US, you will understand what I'm saying. If you don't know the geography of the US, don't worry, go and get a map, okay? So just see how it is, because Europe, US, it's very important that you understand the geography, the lay of the land. You need to see that. So Indians tend to be, except for East Coast, if you see all of the other locations, Indians tend to be places where it's warmer, right? In general. So I think, you need to take that into consideration. Again, as I said, you also don't want to go to a place where there are only Indians because, hey, I'm going to US to get international exposure, right? Not to be sitting with a bunch of other desis, cooking Maggie and, watching Bollywood movies and listening to Arjit Singh. That's not why I want to go to the US to experience a different culture, correct? So that is one more thing that you can look at when you look at profile fitment. The last thing, and this is something that is ignored a lot, according to me, people tend to just ignore it. What is the culture of the college? What do you feel about that college? See, I was just talking to someone earlier today, and I was telling this that though this is something that we tend to not look at, because in India we come from a culture where once you get into a B school, that's it. You get into IIM Ahmedabad, right? You don't look at, hey, IIM Ahmedabad mein culture kaisa hoga, hey, culture sab chodo. Will you get in, right? Now, when you look at the US, when you look at all these schools, what you'll realize is they have very different cultures. Like, let's take two schools, right? Let's take Duke, or let's take Tuck, okay, which is a top 10 school, I believe. So we'll take Tuck and let's take Columbia, right? Now, Tuck is in the middle of, it's not close to a large city, and people are in the campus, so you will enjoy the campus life. You will be in a dorm. Think of this very beautiful 70, 80-year-old college, university, the architecture, the experience, the culture. You are immersed in university life in the US. And anybody who has experienced university life in the US in a top school will tell you that it's really changes your outlook, right? And one of the reasons you are applying to a B school is you want to change your outlook. You want to change the perspective. You don't want to end up being the same person 15 years later, correct? So for that reason, it's very important that you spend time researching about the school, right? Now, here is a diametrically opposite example, Columbia. Now, when we talk about Columbia, what happens there is, first of all, it's in New York, right? Very fast paced. You don't live inside Columbia University. You actually live in Manhattan. You actually take an apartment and you live in Manhattan, right? Just imagine 2 years of your life, you're living next to Wall Street. You're living in Manhattan, right? It's a very different kind of life. It's not an idyllic college life, right? I mean, it's more fast-paced. You have to figure out things yourself, but a lot more exciting, a lot more connectivity to, companies, right? So you'll realize that, Columbia has its advantages. It will appeal to a particular type of person, right? So if you are a person who has lived all his life in Mumbai, for example, okay? I'm just giving an example. If you have lived all your life in Mumbai, maybe Columbia will appeal to you. Correct. But if you come from a smaller city and you're like, culturally you feel Tuck is for you, then, probably Tuck, right? So these are the 4 things that you need to understand when you look at profile fitment. But again, more than, looking at these 4 things or 5 things, I think just check, will I feel at home at this place? Correct. So will I feel at home with people who have, similar work experience, come from industries that I'm aware of, also have a cultural bearing, international students, and also the way the college projects its cultures. Okay. I've seen that there have been a lot of messages on chat, so I don't know. Okay. Thanks a lot. I think it's just that you've been helping me. So thanks a lot. So Shavani, please put this on the chat window. What was the MBA in Seattle? This one is Foster, correct? Yeah, so that was. So yeah, I will be looking at the Q&A. Don't worry. I'll be looking at the Q&A before we get in. So I'm going to quickly answer questions, yes or no. Do B School consider class 12 results? The answer is largely no. Okay, some schools may ask you, but they don't consider, they're not going to hold it against you. Okay, is profile building important to get? See, a good profile is important for getting admission. Okay, ideally your profile building started the day you are born, correct? Because you have life experiences, you get an education, you know, do various things, you get a job. So that is really what your profile is, right? Now somewhere I think people have said that profile building, see, there is, to a large extent, in 2 to 3 months, there is only so much you can do. Okay, let me rephrase what I said. Assume that a person is not good looking. Okay, in the next 3 months, that person can put on some makeup. That person cannot do plastic surgery. Correct. So I'm just saying, to a large extent, profile, you cannot do a plastic surgery to it. You can do a little bit of makeup and make it look a little appealing. Summary of tuition fees, top B school. Sayan, this is all available on the internet. Just Google for it. I'm not the best guy to tell you the exact, what will be the choices with this. Again, it's too generic, Harish. I won't be able to answer it. I'm sorry. How do you build your profile? Again, not in the scope of this topic, Shravani. I won't be able to help you there. What is the average of Shreya Diora? This is a good question. No, just go Google average age at NCR. See, don't use my expertise to ask you data. Remember, if Arun Jagannathan is coming in front of you, ask him his opinion. You should not ask Arun or anyone data. The best person to ask data is Google, right? All of this is available on websites, correct? So I'm not going to, really give you something that I remember. My memory is bad. Okay, so just go ahead and Google for it. Okay. Harsh Jain has asked a good question. His question is, the average age and work experience that you see on websites, on B school websites, is at the time of application or at the time of starting the program? It is at the time of starting the program. Okay, so they will usually say, as on March 31st, 2019, what will be your experience? So they will always give you a date. Okay, so they'll always give you a date in terms of that. Avik Datta, very generic question. What about Emory Tuck Duke? I don't know, right? I mean, you have to give me a question for which I have to, give you an answer, right? So I can't give you a question response based on that. Is there a possibility for, okay, so I'm going to take up Debashish Kar's question. Yes, B schools also consider freshers. A school like ISB has a YLP program, okay, and it also has early entry option. Just do Google ISB EEO, correct? Harvard has something called as 2+2. But apart from the Harvards and the ISBs of the world, you also have a lot of schools which say, look, if you feel that there has been substantial work you have done while you are a student, and you actually have the maturity and you have the leadership capabilities that typically people with 2 years experience would have. Maybe you are part of a society that raised $1 million when you were in college. Maybe you started up something on your own. You got, let's say, Series A funding. You hired 10 programmers. Maybe you did something really big, right? So in that case, you don't need to wait for experience, because you can say that while at college, I already got that experience, correct? Where exactly can we find data about age? They on the website. Harsh, I don't know. Can you name the school? Please elaborate on cultural fit. So Harsh, that's what I spent time explaining, right? That you have to understand. How do you do that? You have to talk to people. You have to, meet them. You have to look at their YouTube videos, go to their Facebook page, look at their blog. See, a lot of times what happens, you have so many sources of data, and, keep getting as many sources of data as possible. So eventually you will say, you know what, it's like, as I said, right, finding the right person to get married to, right? So you'll say, you know what, I somehow feel that my chemistry with this girl is more than another girl that I'm seeing. I mean, not saying that you should be too timing, but I'm saying if you're like exploring options with two people, you probably want to check your, chemistry with that person. So when I say culture, it is the same thing. It is a chemistry that you feel with that college. Correct? See, Mona Lisa, I'm sorry, but this is too generic question. See, what happens, I'll just tell you, when you ask me a very generic question, I really don't have a response. correct? For example, if you say throw light on IMA or ISB, I mean, what light is, so I wouldn't be able to really answer those questions. So I'm going to skip all these questions. I'm going to answer only the questions which are A, very specific, or B, which are not based on data that is Googleable. Okay, so I'm going to use that as a filter. So in case I'm not responding to your question, I really apologize, but perhaps you have not met these two criteria, right? So I'm sorry about it, but you can always, I gave you that profile evaluation thing, right? So you can always go that link, get a profile PDF downloaded, speak to someone at Crackverbal. My team is trained to answer most of your queries, so you don't need to answer or worry on that. Mohit, 9 to 10 years experience, why would that be a dampener? I don't see, it's your opinion, right? Where have you got that opinion from? Who has told you? Because data is opposite. 1 year program, you need more, like 9, 10 years experience is not a problem, right? See, one thing that you have to understand when it comes to age is also that, they are expecting you to be mature enough to go out there and find a job, as opposed to a guy who has just 2 years experience, who probably is a little more clingy, right? Depending on the B school to give them a job. A guy with 10 years experience is someone who is got to figure out, is got that thing figured out himself. Sumit Lakhera, profile building, I will do it as a separate. In fact, there is a video that I've created, so that could help. Today, I'm going to focus only on B school selection. Sorry, Jan, that is too specific a question. Sujat, too generic a question. Okay. So I'm really sorry, right? I mean, it's just that I cannot answer these questions just because it's too generic. It's like, how do I improve my GMAT, right? So I had a student who contacted me yesterday and he wrote, how do I improve my GMAT? मैंने बोला यार मैं तो इसके बारे में I speak 70 hours. ठीक है? मैंने बोला यार मैं कैसे कर सकता हूँ यार मैं तुमको ऐसे how can I write like 2 lines how to improve your GMAT score, right? So it's just something like that. It's because it becomes too generic. I can't. So what is happening also is because people are asking so many questions, I'm not able to go through it. So I'm really sorry. I won't be able to do a proper Q&A because there are just so many questions, right? So let me just go on to the next part. Let me see if I can come back. See, for everyone who's asking me a correct question, there are 5 people asking me generic questions, right? And I hope you understand, I've been speaking non-stop since we started, right? I'm going to do that till the end of the session. That's what I do. But even with me speaking so fast, I cannot get through all the questions, right? All right, so let's look at the second thing, career prospects, okay? Now, if you ask me at the end of the day, right, what is it that a B school really provides you? And this is something that I have. It's my favorite diagram, okay? Very important that you kind of understand this one. What is this? This is you, okay? What is this? This is your goal or your target. You are here, your goal is here. Between you and your goal, there is a gap, or let me use the word delta. Okay. Today, you are not able to reach your goal because there is something that is not there, correct? What you really want is, there are various ways to get to your goal, but you have chosen a particular line to get to your goals, a particular career path. What is that career path? A career path that involves doing an MBA. I've said this multiple times earlier in my sessions, in in the classroom programs. If you forget everything that I've said, if you are getting very confused, see, I'm seeing that from the way you're asking me these questions, right? See, by itself, you have to understand this, that you need to tell me what your goals are. So I'll give a small anecdote, might help you relate to what I'm saying better. So I had gone to my friend's wedding, right? This is a few years ago. I had gone to his wedding in Lucknow. And I had caught a flight to Delhi, and from Delhi, I was traveling by train to Lucknow, and then back to Delhi, and then, catching a flight to Bangalore. Now, while I was returning, late night, the train was late. Supposed to leave at about 10 o'clock, but 11:30, I'm sitting in Lucknow station, okay, sipping a hot cup of tea. And then there's a guy next to me, reading Philip Kotler. And Philip Kotler, in case you don't know, is like this marketing management book. It's supposed to be like the one book that every MBA student has, right? Philip Kotler. So I just looked at him and said, so which MBA program are you looking at, right? Like, oh, sorry, where are you doing your MBA from? He said, sir, I'm doing it from LBS. I said, LBS means like London Business School. He said, no, LBS as in Lal Bahadur Shastri School of Management in Meerut or Ghaziabad. I forgot. So I said, cool, so I said, so why are you doing an MBA? What is your intent? He said, look, Arun, not Arun. He said, look, sir, my goal is, my dad told me that if I do an MBA, I basically have, my father runs a business. My father said, if you have an MBA, people will respect what you're saying. Okay, they will not say, you are my son, hence I have to listen to you. They will listen to you because you have an MBA degree. Secondly, when we get you married, okay, having an MBA is a good credential, it kind of improves your visibility in the marriage market. Question, do you think that's a very valid reason for him to do an MBA? According to me, it is. Perfectly good reason for someone to do an MBA, correct? Now, is Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management at Ghaziabad, correct, or Meerut, is that the best school for him? Perhaps. Why? Because for his goal, he doesn't need to go to Harvard Business School. He doesn't need to go to Tuck. He doesn't need to go to Emory, right? In fact, if he does his MBA from Emory and comes back, right, people will say, "Pata nahi kahin US jaake 2 saal Emory kuch karke aaya." But if they say he went to our own Ghaziabad, right, and he did from Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management, people know that school, correct? So why I'm telling you this is, first thing, figure out what your goal is in life, what you want to do, and nobody can tell you that. Right? Don't try to externalize the problem. If you are in your 20s, okay, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad about it, but if you are in your 20s, it's about time you have a sense of what you want to do over the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, let me add this qualifier. I have no clue what I'm going to do 10 years later. Correct? So I don't expect you to have a clue exactly how life is going to look like, but at least for the next 3-5 years, that, consulting seems to be the area that I want to get into, or I would like to be in tech and I would like to, get into product management. So if you can tell me what is, not now, but if you can just think out and, do your research, what is the function, what is the industry, and what is the geography that you want to be in? What is the function? What is the industry? What is the geography? Correct? So, you could look at, let's say, consulting, you could look at finance, correct? You could look at, let's say, marketing, you could look at, let's say, product management, right? That's a very big thing that has come up, right? Anything that you want to do post MBA, I'm assuming it is also slightly aligned to what you are doing. Don't say, "Arey, I have 5 years experience in IT. Suddenly one day, out of the blue, I want to get into finance." That is not going to happen, correct? So it has to be based on your interests. It has to be based on your background, on your experience, on your education. So it has to be something that is feasible, right? So don't pick a goal that is outright absurd, okay? Now, once you have figured out what is your goal, what is it, I want you to tell me, and be honest about it. Tell me, what is your dream company and what is the title you will have there? Give me a title and your dream company. So let's say you say, I want to get into consulting. Okay. What I want you to do is, I want you to tell me, Arun, I would like to get into McKinsey in their New York office, and my title would be associate. Perfect. Whether it is achievable is a separate thing. At least you know where you're headed. See, problem, people don't even think about it. Okay. Very important that you start thinking about these things. Right? Now, given that background, let us look at what you should do. So remember the 3 O's, 3 E's. What are the 3 E's? First, educate yourself. Learn more about your function, about your industry. If you want to get into finance, take CFA, level 1, level 2, level 3. Right? If you want to be a product manager, take one of these online courses. There are plenty of online courses today, correct? Take those online courses on product management. See if it is for you before you're going to make this huge investment, correct? Second thing is expose yourself as much as possible to this line. So what I mean by expose, talk to people, right? I'll be showing you how to leverage LinkedIn, okay? But talk to people who have done an MBA and today are product managers. Talk to people who are in your dream company in that particular title, doing what you think you want to do 3 years down the line. Why 3 years down the line? 2018 you will apply, 2019 you will get in, 2021 you will graduate. Correct? So you need to look at it from that timeline, saying that 2021-22 May, what is the probability of me getting it? Right? Talk to people if there are forums, right? For example, let's say there is a marketing forum in your city. Go and participate in that. Learn what marketers do. Look at the challenges in the market today. Correct? Expose yourself. And the last one, if possible, experience it as well. What I mean by experience, I'm saying try to work either so you can in your company take up an additional role which is aligned to your post-MBA goal, or you could even take, let's say join another company or, do freelancing, do moonlighting. Let us say you're working full-time as a software engineer. One of your friends has a startup. Say, you know what, I'm doing this particular course from Udacity, and I feel I can do a little bit of product management for you. Would you like me to help you in product management? He says, sure. You do product management for him, put it on your resume, correct? But more importantly, you learn what you want to do. See, the reason I'm emphasizing this so much is because a lot of times people blindly walk into this whole thing, called B school with little idea of what is it that they really want to do. Correct? So, once you know what you want to do, B school selection becomes very easy. Guess what? Now that you know what you want to do, the harder part, correct? The easier part is, does the B school that you're looking at, does it place people? Has it placed at least one person in the past in such a position? If it has not been able to place anyone for that position, then even if it's a very highly ranked school, it is not the school for you. Okay, so I'm actually taking a little different twist over here. So I'm asking you to focus on the goals so that you can look at the MBA program that is the right fit for you. Correct? So that's the second thing that I want you to kind of consider. Okay, let me just look at the Q&A. Let me see if the questions have, so Avik, what is happening? No, I'll be honest, Avik Datta has asked a question. Great question, but unfortunately it's getting lost in the deluge of questions people are asking. It's very hard for me to kind of go through it. I'm just trying to see if there is a... So in the chat window, can you please suggest, is there anything that you think I can do? How do you expect me to answer the 54 questions? I'm not even looking at the questions in the chat window. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. In case you have any suggestions for me, because I really don't know what to do with 58 questions and this. Okay. Anybody else has an audio issue? I hope not. Yeah, Rajat, I will try to do that. Okay. I will try to do that. So let me just go through the questions that I think. So just give me maybe a couple of minutes. Okay, I will just try to see if there are any good questions that I can go through. Please request you not to post any more questions at this stage. I will let you know when to post. Just give me a minute. Let me just go through. Yeah. So one question that Mona Lisa Das had was about UK. So far the examples that I've been giving are US examples, but whatever I said will be applicable to UK also. Correct. So very clearly, it is not that I'm saying US, US, US. It is just that I'm giving more of those examples. Let me start giving you some UK examples also. Okay. Yeah. See, again, Jayant has asked a question, finance background, Seattle area. See, one thing I want to also tell, and this is probably, I don't know if you know this, but I just wanted to make sure that so there are two types of admission consultants, okay? So one type of admission consultant is where they have what is called as a tie-up college. Now, what happens in a tie-up college scenario is this is typically a very low-ranking school, and that school pays me money, right? So they will give me money and they will say, I want you to get me students. So what I will do, I will go to students and say, okay, hey, why don't you go and study in this particular region or this particular school, correct? And they have bunch of courses. They will offer masters in Bitcoin and you name it. They have probably have some weird course for that. We at Crackfable don't operate in that space. Okay, so we operate in a space where we are looking at people who are looking at the top schools only, and I consider top 50 to be the absolute limit of what I would consider to be a top school, right? So I'll just increase the examples. But so someone asked, what do you think, what do you feel about Great Lakes Chennai? I just answered it, right? Like, if it meets your goal, if you want to be a business analyst at Cognizant, right, Great Lakes is an excellent school for you, right? So always ask yourself, what is my post MBA goal? Will this particular um, thing help me? Rajat, post MBA goals, I'll be specific questions. As I said, these are all things that can be handled in your personal evaluation. Okay, so I think let me just go through the rest of it, and I'll probably come back. All right. Just once again, I think my browser just crashed. All right. So all of you are able to see the screen again. Okay. So let me just get started with the next points. Okay. So with regards to when you look at this particular thing, the question that you really need to ask is this school going to help me get where I want to get, correct? And most B schools publish this data on their website. But I just want to give you one word of caution over here. See, in the US, they can't really look at your offer letter. Okay, and I'm saying US, Europe. In fact, in Europe, the data regulations are even more stricter. They can't even reveal in many cases what grades you got. So they can contact the college, but giving the grades is something that is left up to you, right? You can choose to disclose. Now, with regards to the employment data, something very similar. So what they say is, if you get placed, please report what was the salary that you got. There are two problems over here. First, critical reasoning. In case you have been doing critical reasoning, here is a good critical reasoning problem. People who end up getting into a top school, okay, are looking at jobs that really are they're really looking at jobs. They're not just wanting any job. They want a job that really fits into that profile. So many students don't immediately get into a B school. They have a wait and watch policy, correct? So they may wait for 3-4 months before they get the ideal job. So those people are not reporting their jobs. Second, people who report their jobs also could end up inflating it, because they are saying, hey, you know what, I got like a joining bonus, I got this, I got that, and if I meet my targets, I will also get an incentive component, but my total cost to company is $200,000. But see, $200,000 is based on assumption A, B, and C. Those are the kind of things that get hidden, right? So be a little careful. But here is a great way for you to check out, what people are doing when they graduate from the B school. Go to linkedin.com/edu, correct? And over here, what you can do is you can just search for the colleges that you are interested in, correct? So you can go ahead, give your, college of your choice. See alums who are in your network, where are they? And here is where having a very good network on LinkedIn will help. Okay, so if you do not have a good connection on LinkedIn, make sure you start it now. Okay, you start it by connecting with people, putting a good profile picture. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. So just go ahead and search for Arun Jagannathan. Correct. Connect with me. The moment you connect with me, what will happen is everyone else in my connection, correct, all of them will become your second level connection. See, you have to understand that getting connected to people is the key. People who in turn have connections on LinkedIn, right? If there is one thing that you can do in the next 3 to 4 months to network, to actually improve your profile, it is to create your LinkedIn profile. Okay, put a nice picture, get recommendations from your co-workers, from people that you worked in the past. Try to give a description of what you actually did, improve on the extracurricular part, correct? And that's really where LinkedIn can be a great source of getting to know stuff, right? Third, geography. Okay, so before I get to geography, just wanted to understand. So, what is the geography you're looking at? Okay, a lot of people with India, a lot of people with US. Canada has come up, right? In the recent past, Canada has also come up. Europe, Asia Pacific, very good. And then there is one person who wants to do it elsewhere, where that elsewhere is two people actually now. So rest of you, a few of you still who have not polled, can you just go ahead and give me a response? All right. So let me just share. So this is how it looks. Okay. So India, US is number one. I think India is number two, and then you have Canada, Europe, APAC also in that list. Great. So what I'll do is let me kind of give you a very basic this. So let's look at the world map, right? Now, I'm just keeping a very simple world map, right? You have North America, you have South America, you have Europe, you have Africa, you have Middle East and Russia, and then you have the APAC region, right? The Asia Pacific, which includes Australia. Now, and you can probably use the chat window for this, but anybody who's interested in applying to, so anybody who's applying to Saudi or Africa, anybody in that region, anybody wants to apply to South America? Lima School of Management, Peru Program for Management? No. Okay. So let me just knock off. So in that case, I'm going to knock off this. All right. Uh, Let me now look at Africa. So not many of you are applying to Africa. So I've kept South America out of it, Africa out of it. And I assume Middle East and Russia also, not many people applying over here. See, if you look at it, to a large extent, there are only three geographies we apply to, right? We apply to North America, we apply to Europe, we apply to Asia Pac. Let me start with North America. So you basically have US and Canada. Okay. So what are the pros? What are the cons? US, easy for you to get a job because the economy is good. Bad is the visa part, right? It's easy. It may be easy for you to get a job if you are an American. Okay. If you have a US passport, you graduate from a top school in the US, getting a job will not be a problem. The problem is graduating from a top school in the US with an Indian passport. Correct? So economy is large. So all of you understand, right? The US economy is huge, man. It's huge. In fact, if California were to be a country, okay, it would have, I think, the third or the fifth largest GDP in the world. Just one state, California. Just think about it, right? Texas would be number 9, right? So each of the states of the US are, bigger than countries, right? So obviously opportunities. Tell me one company which will not have a major office in the US. One large company which will not have an office in the US. Impossible, correct? There are very few countries which can boast of this. But what has really happened is, see, I'm not here to give you my political views. Trump is wrong or Trump is right or whatever. All I can say is that the scrutiny has increased. Why has the scrutiny increased? Very honestly, it is because in India, we exploited the whole H-1B visa thing, correct? So what used to happen to a large, even till recently it was happening. This year, I've seen that number go down considerably. You have these so-called agents who will poach people from these colleges and say, I will send you to US, I'll send you to Canada, correct? Typically you must be seeing these education fairs that they do these, they have these counselors coming in and doing that. Now once you go to this no-name college in the US, correct, what they do in that college is they are not focused on teaching you. There is now another system over there, that the moment you land in college, you will go to a consultant, quote unquote, who will try to get you a job, okay, which will pay you peanuts. You will be sitting with 7 other Indians in one small dingy room somewhere in California, right? Yeah, that's what they were doing. $55,000, $60,000. That's the kind of salary they were paying, right? And as I said, in a place like California, that is probably below the poverty line. Correct. So what happened? The system was there, and because they wanted to break the system, they started doing increased scrutiny. So today, what is happening? A lot of people applying to these no-name colleges, they are getting their F1 visa rejected. Okay, and this whole system of getting your H-1B visa, the paperwork has been made, a lot more stringent. So that is kind of cutting out many of these middle agents. Correct. Now, unfortunately, because of that, what is happening? Even people applying to top B schools are feeling the pinch. But let me tell you, if you are applying to, let's say, a top 20, top 30 school, and if you are looking at getting to, a top company, they will do the paperwork for you. They will make sure they put in the effort kind of to get you there, because today US technology or consulting or the finance industry cannot survive without the kind of talent that India is providing. Correct. So in order to get this kind of talent, they have to make sure the company jumps through various hoops. They will get you a job. I know people who have graduated Infosys, 5 years experience, went to Michigan Ross, has gotten into McKinsey. Okay, I just spoke to that student today morning, right? There's another student who has, made it to Amazon, right? There's another student who's made it to Google from London Business School. So I'm just saying that it is possible to get a job, right? And top companies will get you, will go through that whole process of getting that H1B. What has really happened is the smaller companies have been killed. The no-name colleges have been wiped out. So I would say don't worry if that has never been your goal. If your goal was never to compete with those people, don't worry. You are not going to get affected to a large extent. The other way to look at it, Trump came into office in 2017. The US presidential term is for 4 years. Assuming that he completes all 4 years, right? That's a big if. He will complete office by 2021, correct? If you are going into a B school, you will join a B school in 2019, which means you will graduate in 2021, right? So my take, don't worry, it's a leap of faith, MBA at best, correct? So I would say things will work out. But again, there is a risk, and I'm just telling you what the risk is. Now, those voting for Canada, right? Here is the deal with Canada. Canada, great schools. Again, you got, see, US, you got the pretty much, you can take any rankings, 20, 30, 40, 50 top schools are there in the US. And one thing I want to tell you about this whole thing is, in the US, when you're looking at schools, remember that it's not just Harvard and Wharton and Stanford and Booth and Kellogg and, all these. Also look at schools. There are some really good schools in the 20 to 30 rank, 30 to 40 rank that gives you good ROI. They give you good scholarships. So many of these schools, if you apply with a very high GMAT score, they will give you substantial scholarship, which means your entire MBA will work out to, let's say, 10, 15 lakhs, which means if at all you have to come back to India, you can still take that risk, right? Because 10, 15 lakhs at least is a manageable amount, right? It's not like you're taking 1.2 crores as loan and not knowing what to do. Now, coming to Canada, good news, it is very easy to get a visa, okay? Very easy to get a PR, which is permanent residency. But what is difficult? To get a job, because the economy is a lot smaller than the US economy, right? US sneezes, Canada catches a cold, right? So you have, even within Canada, there is Quebec, which is French speaking. They speak more French in Quebec than even France, right? So you want to avoid those areas. So you're left with, let's say Toronto, correct? So you need to understand, though it's great in terms of getting a visa, you have to be very realistic. What are the job opportunities, right? Because the last thing that you want to do is going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's, right? And say that, oh, I got a visa, I got a job. Yeah, sure, you got a job, but that's not a job that you wanted. Now, coming to Europe, I think is, in the last couple of years especially, has been going through this slightly, tough time, both economy-wise and in terms of the visa aspect. Okay, both the visa aspect and the economy aspect has been a little tight. Okay, so that's one thing I just wanted to let you know. Having said that, I would bifurcate European colleges into UK college and continental Europe. Continental Europe is everything that is non-UK. Okay, so it is the British Islands, right? So that's why it's kind of. Now, why am I separating UK and continental, Europe as two different things? Well, firstly, the advantage that you have with UK is they speak English, right? They speak English, and if you are an Indian wanting to, go abroad, you want to go to a place where at least you can speak the language, right? They drive on the left-hand side of the road. They watch cricket. Right, so a lot of similarities culturally. Also, you have some great schools. You have London Business School, obviously, as one of the top schools. You have SIAD in Oxford. You have Cambridge. So you got a bunch of good schools in UK. And tell you what, after Brexit, things are actually better for Indians, because earlier the jobs were taken up by Europeans, right? But after Brexit, right, they're saying, well, anybody has to do the job. You could be from Europe, you could be from India. So I've had a lot of students who graduated in UK this year who have got multiple job offers, right? So I'm just telling you that the UK market has changed. Also, they used to give you a visa for 3 months after you graduate. Like, let's say you graduate in March, so your visa will be till June, right? So April, May, June, so you basically do 3 months. But now they are giving 6 month visas. And 6 months is also helping people, better understand, do internships, work with companies, do networking. So 6 months is a fairly long time for you to really do a job search, correct? Now, continental Europe, which is, typically you have schools in Spain, you have schools in France. So you have a HEC Paris, you have an IE, IESC, ESADE, you have, SDA Bocconi in Italy. So you've got a bunch of schools. Good thing, culturally, you are exposed to something that is very new, right? So you learn a language, you learn a new culture. Europe, these places are beautiful. Correct. If you've been there, you'll realize very beautiful, picturesque space. And if you are studying in Spain, you got an opportunity to, move around other countries also. You could go to Portugal, right? You could go to other countries. So the idea is you want to a very immersive, culturally immersive program. Then continental Europe is there. Having said that, the flip side, as opposed to UK, is language. Right? So you want to make sure that you understand that is something that you're going to have a lot of discomfort with. If you're okay with that discomfort, these schools could be good. But if not, you should not be going there. See, like Spain, right? I mean, you got to understand, if, as I said, if you're a vegetarian, you don't speak Spanish, it's going to be a tough 2 years for you. Right? Spain is not what they show in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. Okay, like you'll meet Katrina Kaif and you will, play Tomatino Festival with her. It doesn't work that way. Correct? So you have to understand that the reality is very different. Now, that's pretty much the basic this. But there are a couple of good schools in France, Fontainebleau. That's the campus. So that's one school. Then you also have IMD. I mentioned it earlier. So IMD Switzerland is another school. So some great schools that you have in Europe. Okay. Now, coming to Asia Pacific, basically two things I would say: India and the rest. Correct? India, you have obviously you have ISB, you have the IIMs, IMA, IMD, IMC, IMLL, all offering these one-year programs, and then you have Great Lakes in Chennai. You have XLRI, GMP. Again, don't ask me whether a school is good or bad. Just check. Arey, ye school after they graduate, what do they do? What are they doing? Is it something that I want to do, right? So as long as there is a mapping in that sense, you don't need to worry, correct? And obviously, India economy is booming. Also, the fact that you don't need to worry about a visa. I am assuming the audience is are Indian, so you don't need to worry about a visa, correct? Those are the advantages, correct? What are the disadvantages of doing an MBA in India? See, what is the world requiring, right? Like, think about it. I'll just give an example. Think of Satya Nadella. Okay. Now, if you really think about it, you could argue Satya Nadella is an Indian. He said, no, uska passport to American hai, so Satya Nadella is an American, right? But does it mean that Satya Nadella is an Indian or an American or any other part of the world? Satya Nadella is a global citizen. Sundar Pichai is a global citizen. If you looked at his announcement of the Google Assistant, right? So all of you saw that, right? On WhatsApp, right? That's one joke that is going viral in family groups, right? People forwarding this, 10 MB files to you. One thing that you notice is he speaks with a very pronounced Indian accent. You notice that? So he's a South Indian who, is gone to the US, been there for enough years, but he still speaks with a very pronounced Indian accent. Now, why I'm saying that is because at heart he's Indian, but he's really a global citizen. Correct? That is what you want to be. And if you're been in India all your life, you continue to be in India. Many a times what happens is that global perspective doesn't come, right? So that is my case for, doing MBA abroad. But let me also make a case for why you should do an MBA in India. See, MBA inherently has a lot of risk in terms of money, in terms of, whether you'll get a job or not. If you are a person who's risk averse, right? You are saying, look, India seems to have a great economy. I see India growing, okay, over the next few years. This is where I want to be. Then you want an education from an Indian school. See, ISB, what is the full form? Indian School of Business. IIM, Indian Institute of Management. Everything has Indian as an adjective in its word, in the term itself, correct? So for that reason, it's important that you understand that, look, I want to be India focused, right? If that is your choice, by all means, apply only to Indian schools. And that is my logic for any school, right? If you want to go to Australia, there are some schools, AGSM, Australian Graduate School of Management in Sydney, Melbourne Business School, or if you look at Singapore, NUS, NTU, correct? If you look at, there are schools like CBIZ in China, there is Hong Kong, there are schools like HKUST, there are schools like AIM in Manila, Philippines. But every time that you look at any school, what is that one question that you need to ask yourself? Is this aligned with what I want to do? Right? Is this aligned with what I want to do? Is this my calling? Do I want to go and study in Philippines? Maybe there is a good reason for you to do that. If not, don't apply there. Right? Same thing for NUS and NTU. Look at it. Try to understand. If I graduate, what are people doing? Is this the kind of culture that I want? Because Singapore, very close home, very hot, humid. Though it has all these fancy things, culturally, is that if you want to get an international degree, do you want to go to Singapore? Do you want to go further away? Right? All of these are decisions that only you can make. Nobody else can make on your behalf. Right? But it's important that you understand all of this and make an educated choice. Again, as I said, today's session is to help you, kind of understand what this thing is about. I do not expect that suddenly after today's session, you know exactly which school you are going to get through, correct? I just want to make sure that you do the research. See, there is this thing, right? I don't know what I don't know. So I hope after today's session, you get clarity saying, Acha, I also have to see this, or I also have to see that. Correct? So as long as you are able to understand that this is going to be a very tough process where you will, go through a lot of, introspection. Correct? I mean, as long as you understand that, I'm happy. Right? So now you realize, I have not even gotten to the end of it, but now you realize how hard it is for me to tell me a good school for me in US. अरे ऐसा नहीं बोल सकता यार. It's like you asking me, अरे किससे शादी करूं, right? I don't know who you should get married to, right? I can just offer you my opinion, saying, look, you should look at this, you should look at that. But eventually, what rocks your boat is something that I would not be able to advise you on, right? So let's just kind of quickly see. Where is it that, so we'll go for another 20 minutes, 15 odd minutes. Okay. So first we answered this, right? Indian versus foreign MBA. I've given you my opinion on that. I told you about UK. I told you about North America. I told you about Southeast Asia, Australia. Okay. One thing, especially when it comes to US, because all of these other countries, your choice is which country to go to, correct? Which country to go to. If you say England, pretty much London is the place to be, right? I mean, there is hardly any other city which is, if you go to Spain, it is either going to be Barcelona or Madrid, correct? You really will not find anything else. In fact, more in Barcelona perhaps than in Madrid, but that's pretty much where your scope is. But US is very different. In US, what happens is you have various geographies within that. I briefly mentioned this, right? So if you're looking at technology, West Coast could be a good bet for you. If you're looking at finance, you could look at, New York. So you want to be in a place where your industry is, correct? If you're in technology, it doesn't make sense for you to study in Florida, correct? So you need to understand, where is my technology? Where does my dream companies, where is their office? I gave you the earlier example of Seattle, correct? Similarly, try to see, okay, what are the places that people go to? And many a times what you'll see is, what's the term for it? It's a very incestuous relationship, right? So the way it works is, if you're working in the Wall Street, correct? Let's say after a couple of years, you get bored, you say, let me go do an MBA. Now, you don't want to go to some place, you want to be in a place that you are already comfortable with. And if you are in New York, the best place to go is Columbia. Now you go to Columbia, you do your MBA over there, and guess where you're going to be going after your MBA? To Wall Street again. And then a couple of years later, when you're supposed to recruit, where do you think you're going to go back to? You're going to go back to Columbia. So sometimes it's just that, it's just the locational advantage that some cities have. But if in the US, my suggestion, please research about the city. The last thing you want to do is go to a place which is in the middle of nowhere. And trust me, there are places like this, correct? That will be cold like 7-8 months of the year, correct? And it's completely cut away from the rest of the, economy, so to speak. So don't think of US as India. India is a very small country. US is 7 times the size of India. So when you say I will fly from, let's say, Dallas to, Los Angeles, it is a lot more difficult. It's not that easy. All right. So it's not that easy. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand that bit. Okay. It's a lot tougher. Okay. Last thing, and this is where I want you to, be slightly more realistic in terms of your chances. But before that, let me ask you one more question, which is, how many of you have taken the GMAT? Have you taken the GMAT, booked your dates? Okay. Some of you left. Can you just go ahead quickly? Whatever you think at this point, right? If you feel I've not thought about it, that's also okay. All right. So I got majority of you saying yes, I've taken the GMAT, but I'm planning to retake. Or the second category, no, but I've booked my dates. So sooner than later, I'll probably be going towards taking my GMAT. Excellent. So that's really what I wanted to know, because your chances of admission to a large extent are going to be based on your GMAT score. So if your target school's average GMAT score is 650, if you get 680 and above, which is 30 points and above, that is my thumb rule. If you get 30 points and above, you are in the safe category. If you are between 640 and 670, you are in the zone. That means you are in a reach category. And if you have less than 30 to 40 points of what the GMAT has, okay, you probably are going to be looking at a stretch category. Okay. Just one quick point on this is that, so Rajat, yes, that is why I bifurcated between UK and other languages. Not knowing the local language, you cannot study in Germany without knowing German. You're going to be killed. Okay, you'll be butchered. So don't even think about that. Correct. One more question. Good question. Thanks, Harsh, for reminding me. And Pratik also. 1 year versus 2 years. Okay. I'll just quickly go back to that point. Europe has 1 year programs. US has 2 year programs. Asia Pac has 1 year programs. So if you are going to go to the US, you will do a 2 year MBA. If you're not going to the US, you will do a 1 year MBA. So your 1 year MBA versus 2 year MBA is based more on where you want to go to. Whether you want to go to US or whether you want to be in India and Europe. India, Europe, 1 year programs. US, 2 year programs. Clear? Okay. So that's a very important consideration for you, correct? Which is you need to understand that if I am applying to a set of schools, what I will do is I will try
to 12 o'clock.
2 stretch schools, 2 schools where, let's say I get a 730 on the GMAT, correct? Then 30 points above my average, which means any top 10 school will become not a top 10 school. I would say top 10 school can never be a safe school, right? But realistically, with a 760, 770 kind of score, you probably can be targeting a top 10 kind of school, right? So you want to apply, let's say your score is 760, okay? Apply to 2 in the top 10, right? Maybe 2 in the 10 to 20 category. So one of my students, he got a 750 on the GMAT, right? He got through, so his mix was, he applied to, a few in the top. He applied to Booth, Kellogg, and he applied to, I think, Berkeley. And then from the 10 to 20 category, he applied to UCLA, he applied to Keenan Flagler, and he applied to one more school. And then from the 20 to 30, he applied to, let's say 2 or 3 schools, right? Like he applied to Emory, he had a 750 on the GMAT. Very good profile, startup profile. Okay. Now, eventually what happened is he made it to a school which was in the stretch or the deemed category, right? A top 10 school. So he he did make it to a top 10 school. He chose Kellogg. But the point is, he did not apply only to top because he knew that Kellogg nahi hua, because he got a ding from the other 2 schools. And Kellogg also, he was waitlisted. Right now, if he had not gotten into Kellogg, he at least had a backup, right? At least 10 to 20 have another school. Same thing for Europe, correct? I know London Business School is your dream school, correct? But keep maybe Oxford in a rich category, and maybe keep Cranfield in a safe category, correct? So you need to have an approach where you are mixing up the schools that you are applying to, and as I said, your chances of getting in largely dependent on your GMAT scores. All right, cool. With that, I think pretty much I covered the 4 things that I wanted to tell you about. Just wanted to let you know that we have a course that we retail for $69. It's called Kickstarting Your MBA Plans. This is a course that is completely shot with me as the speaker. Okay. And as I said, we retail it for $69. But for people coming in today, just for this weekend, we are giving it for $1. Right? So in case you want to go ahead and buy it, I'll be giving you this link. So I'll separately give you the link. So don't worry on that part. So that's pretty much what I had. And let me just do one thing. Let me just put the link. Let me just put the link in the chat window. Okay, so all right. So Harsh J, for Indians, 30 plus average is reach and not safe. Haven't seen a sizable proportion of Indians with GMAT score around MBA. So I didn't get that point, but as I said, top 10 can never be safe. Whatever I told you, okay, is not for the top 10, top 15 for that matter, correct? Which means that today, for a top 15, top 20 kind of school, a 740, 750 is considered on par. Okay, a 700 is almost like you have to retake. You'll be dinged if you're looking at a top 10, 15 school in the US, correct? So that said, for everything else, this 30 wala rule, you can use it as a thumb rule. Except for the top 15 odd schools, you can use that as a thumb rule, okay? So that's all I had. I really hope that I was able to, kind of give you some light into this whole thing, right? So because my objective was that I cover quite a lot of things, right, in a fairly short period. So I hope I've been able to do justice, correct? See, Aditya Aryan, I wouldn't know what you mean by role of school fee, correct? So it doesn't make sense. So I'm not able to understand the question, right? So I wish I'm able to answer. So today, I think we have got at least 150, 200 different questions, right? Both in the chat and in the Q&A. So what I would strongly encourage all of you to do, please reach out to us. We will make sure we will answer your question. Okay, I guarantee personally, okay, that we will answer all your questions. Please write to the person that you're talking to at Crack Verbal. Okay, you want us to help you read the employment report? We'll do that. My answer is yes to everything, okay? But I'm just saying that webinar may not be the best forum for it, okay? So please make sure you reach out, and thanks a lot. I went a little overboard, so I went like about 7 minutes overboard, but I hope I was able to give you value. And thanks a lot for joining me on a nice Saturday morning. In case you're in Karnataka, you have not voted, please go ahead and cast your vote, all right? Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.